Hello! Today I'm going to be doing a Bible study of the book of Genesis, chapter 18. I feel God directed me to restart the Bible from the book of Genesis, and I feel He's guided me to do a study throughout. So today's going to be Bible study, chapter 18 of the book of Genesis. And there is so much goodness in this chapter, so I am excited. So I'm going to starting off with the reading. So verse 1, it reads, and the Lord appeared it's the Lord appears to Abraham. So just a little bit back, the previous chapter was about the covenant of circumcision. So I'm going to go through verses 1 through 8, and those ones are about hospitality, and I'm going to kind of explain them as we go along, just so it makes like the most sense. And it reads, and the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground. And he said, My Lord, if I now have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on. For therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, So do as thou hast said. And Abraham hasted into the tent unto Sarah, and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the herd. And Abraham ran to the herd, and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hastened to dress it. And he took the butter and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. Now I'm going to go through verses 1 through 8 and explain the hospitality that was shown. And when it reads, verse 2, it reads, and he lifted up his eyes and looked, 3 men stood by him, and when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground. And in verse 1, it says that he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. So it was hot outside. So even if it is hot outside, we still want to show hospitality. And it shows like he ran to meet them, right? So he went to go greet them. And he showed them respect, right? So he bowed to the ground, and he showed respect, right? And so in this verse, it said the 3 men that they were speaking about, I believe these men were angels, because going into the next verse, next chapter, chapter 19, it says Lot entertains 2 angels. And I believe, and at the end of this chapter, it talks about those men going towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and those were the angels, I believe. I do believe those are the angels, I believe, that were going to Sodom and Gomorrah to, we're going to get to that part. But I do believe these were angels, and I feel the Lord, as I was talking to the Lord, I feel like what he was showing me was just like how we speak, how we should treat God's people, right? How we should treat God's people, right? These are God's people. And so he ran to meet them. He got up and met them. He showed them respect, right? And then going down into the next one, it reads, Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Right? So he went to go fetch water for them to wash their feet. We know that Jesus washed the disciples' feet, and also commanded us, to wash feet as well. So that makes me think about that. And he said, And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on. For therefore ye come to your servant. And they said, So do as thou hast said. Right? So so this is like, so he went to go prepare a meal for them, right? And he made a good meal, right? So he got a good fat tender calf, and it made me think about that like he prepared like a good meal for them, right? These are God's people. So it made me think about how God, when he got mad at the Israelites when they gave a sacrifice of a bad animal to him, right? So it made me think about that, and how he prepared like a good meal for them. So he prepared a really nice, like, good meal for them. He's showing them, like, he prepared a good meal for them, and he sat down, he stood there while they ate. So he was like, I believe he stood there while they ate, just showing, just showing them like hospitality, right? So So now I'm going to go in. So that was verses 1 through 8, and now we're going to go into verse 9. And this one is, so it reads, "And they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I certainly bear a child which am old? Is there anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return unto thee according to the time of life. Sarah shall have a son." Okay, a little bit of backstory. So Abraham was promised a promised child, and he ended up having that promised child. God gave him a promise of a child, and by this time he's real old in age. He ended up having a child at 100 years old. So we do know that. I don't know like the time distance between this and when he had between this and when he had the child, but we do know that he was like older. He was way past the time. He was past the time of having children, and God had told him like at the appointed time you will bear a child. And Sarah heard this, and and she laughed, but what stood out to me was that everything happens in times and seasons. So in verse when it reads is at the appointed time I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. And it made me think about how we have times and seasons. And what I wrote down was everything God promised you will come to pass at the appointed time, because we know that was God's promise, but it was going to come to pass at the appointed time. Going into verse 15, it reads, Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh. And the man rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on their way. So this is another showing hospitality as well, right? So so the men they looked toward, to bring him on away. And it says, I looked up, it reminded me like, it's kind of like when you like walk someone to the door. And I looked up that, and the definition that I got was a polite way of saying goodbye. I feel like that's a really good way to explain it. But that also was showing like, that politeness still. And then it goes on to 17 and reads, And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham the thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment. And the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. So this stood out to me as well, because we know that. So when it reads that, so this is like telling us that we want to. This is telling us that we want to raise our kids up in the Lord, right? Because when he said that, for I know him that he will command his children and obey in his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment. So we want to raise our kids up in the Lord. So going on to verse 20, it reads, And the Lord said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now to see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from thence and went toward Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord. This part really stuck out to me. I feel the Lord highlighted this one, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord. And what I wrote down was, they left, but Abraham was not done talking yet. So going into verse 23, it reads, And Abraham drew near and said, Abraham drew near and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure, which means perhaps, there be 50 righteous within the city, wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And the Lord said, If I find Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. And Abraham answered and said, Behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust, and ashes. Peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all the city for the lack of 5? And he said, If I find there 40 and 5, I will not destroy it. And he spake unto him yet again, and said, Peradventure there shall be 40 found there. And he said, I will not do it for the 40's sake. And he said unto him, O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure there shall be 30 found. Peradventure there shall 30 be found there. And he said, I will not do it, if I find 30 there. And he said, Behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord. Peradventure there shall be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy for the 20's sake. And he said, O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy for the 10's sake. And the Lord went his way, as soon as he left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. This whole one is so good, right? So what this reminded me of, what this really stuck out to me was this convincing God, right? Because we know Abraham, so just to kind of explain it, Abraham was convincing God to not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, right? He said he was interceding for the people. And this made me think about how we can convince God, right? So it made me think about Moses. So we know Moses used to try to convince God as well. So thinking back, like, when Moses, I remember a story in the Bible when Moses was telling God, like, because God was ready to destroy the Israelites, right? And because he was ready to destroy the Israelites, and Moses was like, well, don't do that, because if you do that, the nations are going to think that you weren't able to bring to pass what you had said, and he was, that's what he was telling God, and God did not destroy the Israelites, and that is like, so like, having those we can having conversations with God, and and we see this a lot in the Bible, you know what I mean? So convincing God, right? And it also made me think about David, right? So we know the story of David, and when David was trying, there's a story in the Bible, 2 Samuel chapter 11, is about David and Bathsheba, I believe, I might pronounce that incorrectly, but David is either Bathsheba, but it's second. I'm trying to work on biblical names and pronouncing people's names correctly. I feel like something God has been telling me to do. But it's a story. So David ended up killing her husband because he lusted after her, right? So he lusted after her, and he killed the husband, and he married her, and they ended up having a baby, and she got pregnant. I can't remember if she had the baby or the baby. I'm pretty sure she had the baby, or I don't know if the baby like died or it was like a miscarriage. But the punishment that God gave was that he was gonna take the baby, right? So in the verse it reads, David pleaded with God for the child. He fasted and spent 3 nights lying in sackcloth on the ground, and that's 2 Samuel 12:16. But so he was trying to convince God, right? And this is something that I do too. So a story, like, remember I was doing something that wasn't pleasing to God, and I had and God told me to cut my hair. Like, I had braids in my hair, so like he wanted to take my hair down basically, and I was like, I tried to convince God tried to convince him to not make me take my hair down, because I said, like, I knew, like, if God said, like, if he was like, he was like, how it made me, how when, like, there's certain times like when you can convince God and he'll go with that, and there's other times when he will just be like, no, don't do, this is it. And it makes me think about the story in the Bible when about Moses, when he was trying to convince God to allow him to go to the promised land, and God told him, no, don't ask me about this again, right? So that made me, I believe at that time that's what I was thinking about. I remember reading that story, knowing that sometimes God will be like, don't ask me about this again. But I didn't read the story of David at that time. But I just knew, I was like, I didn't read the story of David at that time. But I said, like, maybe I could convince him until he tells me, like, unless he says, like, don't ask about this again. I tried to commit, and he ended up letting me keep my hair in as well, because I didn't get that. So I feel God, I feel he allowed me to keep it in my hair. And and it makes me think, like, we can having those conversations with God, like, we're made in his image, which is like mind blowing. And it's like thinking, like, just having like those conversations, like those like real conversations with God. And it's just like, so like, it's just like, just crazy to think about to me. I just be like, just like blown, like my mind is like just, I don't know, thinking about that though. But yes, you guys, this was so chapter 18 was it had a lot of goodness in this chapter, and I thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please comment any kind of videos you guys would like to see, and God bless you guys. And this is a wonderful chapter. Go back and read the chapter, it's so good. Ask God questions, and remember, you can have real conversations. Like, we can have real conversations with God, and you can even try to convince God. But yes, you guys, God bless you.